Hi everyone, welcome to my quick talk. Today I'll be talking to you about how to minimize bad judgment by critical thinking. Critical thinking is one of those essential skills that all of us require, that we need to utilize actively in order to make the right decisions or reach the right conclusions in any given circumstances. Plainly put, critical thinking is the objective analysis or evaluation of an issue which you can use to form a judgment. This should be differentiated from the other forms of thinking like creative thinking or strategic thinking. So creative thinking is where we try to look at things from a new perspective and try to find a new resolution or an answer to a situation. Strategic thinking is where we try to meet an end goal. It is very clear that critical thinking requires you to be analytic and go deeper into the circumstances and the scenario in order for you to reach a judgment or find or make a decision of your own. First things first, the human brain works at a relatively slow pace compared to everything else in our life. To tell the truth, our brain is only capable of processing information at 60 bits per second. So it is very clear that we are not as fast paced as technology or all other situations and circumstances that we are put into. Hence, for us to make the right decision or reach a good decision, we have to think about things critically so that we are able to extract the most out of that. There are four main things that generally kill critical thinking in our minds and in human as a whole. First of all, when we go on to over-rely on authority of someone else, we tend not to question that authority and we just tend to accept what has been told to us by that point of authority. That's one of the killers of critical thinking. Secondly, we generally end up making hasty moral judgments, which is conditioned by our culture and the circumstances and surroundings that we are in, which stops us from questioning circumstances and situations, and we rather tend to accept whatever we have been culturally conditioned to do. We also over-rely on labels of others. For example, someone who's this and this or that and that, so whatever they're saying is true, and we don't end up challenging whatever they're saying. And lastly, it is our own personal resistance to change and our own biases that stop us from changing our thoughts and adopting a better and right method of thinking. So let's get learning. What are the ways we should be thinking about something, especially about things where you have to make a good and important decision? First of all, any decision should be followed by the fact that what is the purpose behind this activity? Then you start questioning that what are the best questions to ask in this situation, which will allow me to extract the right information that will help me to make the right decision. Third, are we basing our judgment on any assumptions? Even if we are assuming certain things and we're taking certain facts for granted, is it safe for me to assume that particular fact? Is this an established fact which I can put into a box of assumed or regulated assumptions? Next, what is the perspective from which you're looking at the thing? Are you looking at an issue from both perspectives, from both sides of the story, or are you just looking at it from your own side? Remember, the lesser the information you have, the worser the judgment is likely to end up being. Lastly, as I've just said, the information that you're relying on to make your decision. Whatever you're deciding on, is this a fact? Do you have all the relevant information regarding that fact? Whatever statements that you are relying your judgment on, are these full? Are these complete? What are the sources from which this information came to you? Are these credible sources? Are there any claims? Are there any biases? Are there any logical fallacies which is stopping you from receiving or consuming all the right information using which you will make that decision? Are there any inconsistencies? And to conclude, What is the best way to interpret the information that you have received? Once we have all this information and we are capable of looking at things from all the perspectives and identify all the relevant information that is important for me to know in order for me to make the decision, we will move on to the actual method of making the decision. This requires us to take a few steps and make a little bit of adjustments in ourselves and in our minds for us to reach that conclusion. This is a Nobel Prize winning method of thinking. Psychologists Kahneman and Tversky are the ones who came up with this. So let's look at it like this. There are two systems of thinking. Number one is fast, automatic, which is also efficient, but it's unconscious and based on our intuitions. And the second system is slow, effortful, controlled, and very attentive. Which of these two do you think relies on critical thinking? Definitely it's system 2. System 1 is where we generally think about things on a daily basis. We end up taking decisions quickly and easily, not thinking of the consequences, and generally relying on the first thought that comes to our mind. That is not critical thinking, that's general thinking. That's the kind of thinking that we use on a daily basis to make normal decisions. But when we have to make a good judgment call, when you have to make a decision which can have a long-lasting impact, or the result of which can be very important to you, we should not be relying on system 1. Rather, we should be relying on the other method where we are effortful, attentive, slow, and controlled. How do you prepare yourself to make these right decisions, and how do you condition yourself to put yourself in a situation where you are able to do the critical thinking? The systems go like this. Number 1, stop multitasking. Do not think about more than one thing at a time. Do not look at your cell phone. Put it away. Put away all forms of distractions. Turn off notifications. Do not be distracted when you are making an important decision. If possible, sleep on it. Think about the factors, think about the information, think about what you're supposed to decide on. Finish a trail of thought, go to sleep. Wake up early in the morning when your mind is the most clear. Take some time away from everything else when you are alone with a clear mind and you're able to think about the same information once again. Because revising the information always leads you to new conclusions. Eat on it. It is also said by the psychologists that an empty stomach often leads to bad decisions because your hormones and your mind are not at ease. Lastly, avoid any complex situations where you are forced to take a decision immediately. Extract yourself out of complex situations. Have a seat, have a clear mind. Avoid any complex situations. This requires for you to have a lot of self-control. Stay away from distractions, have a clear mind, and think about all the information that you have received on the factor or the matter that you're deciding on. Utilize those things to balance the pros and cons. Try to understand if you're being biased about certain information or if you are relying on some form of an argument or a bias of your own, which is not backed by any information or logic. And then try to put together all these information and make the right decision for you. In doing all those, now you are in a state of critical thinking and you are capable of making better judgment calls than before. Hope you enjoyed this talk. I'll be talking more about critical thinking in another quick talk later on. Thank you for being with us.